When I say defensive line rankings, what I mean is interior defensive line rankings, defensive tackles. We will not spend long on this because, frankly, the class isn't very good, Traps. Let's start at the bottom. Oh, boy. Osa Odighizuwa. I messed that up. What? Give me the name. How do you pronounce his name out of UCLA?
Osa Odighizuwa.
Osa Odighizuwa. Okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah, this class isn't very good, just to kind of, not to be like a bummer of a guest, but the D tackle class is not good. If we see one or two defensive tackles go in the first round, that would actually be kind of surprising. With Odighizuwa, he's kind of this unique player that he played all up and down the line at UCLA. 6'2", 282. So it's a really weird body type. And he wins just with that first step quickness to get through a gap. Good leverage because he's built so low to the ground. There's great center of gravity to his game. The pass rushing moves aren't really there yet. And I don't know how amazing of an athlete he is outside of that first step. But a team that really prioritizes, say in the second or third round, like someone that could play nose tackle on a play, then play against an offensive tackle, then play three technique. That's Osa Odighizuwa, someone that's a little bit limited athletically and with his pass rushing moves, but plays with deceptive power because he's built so low to the ground.
Okay. Moving along, Davion Nixon out of Iowa, number 4 for you.
Davion Nixon is probably the most ready to be a quality pass rusher of any of these defensive tackles in the NFL. He's 6'3", 313. I didn't really see him being that big on film, but he wins with his handwork and what you were saying in the previous segment about NFL teams liking Pat Fitzgerald and that system. I think Kirk Ferentz and guys in the trenches, they know playing at Iowa, they're very well coached. And Nixon shows that. Has a array of pass rushing moves and good lateral quickness. If he's playing three technique on the outside shoulder of a guard, he can quickly get across the gap and penetrate through the middle. He's not very powerful. And in the run game, I think he gets washed out a little bit more than I would like to see. But in the second round, if you're like, hey, this is a pretty polished pass rusher, that's around the value of where you want to pick someone like Davion Nixon.
Okay. And Milton Williams, Louisiana Tech. I mean, we're not talking first rounders here, right?
No, these guys are not first rounders, no. But Milton Williams has the chance to maybe go, if there's any prop bets for Milton Williams, maybe bet that he'll be picked higher than any of the speculation out there. The guy had a 38.5-inch vertical and had under a 7-second 3-cone time. And that's the threshold, 7 seconds at 6'3" and 284 pounds. That, a 38.5-inch vertical and a 3-cone under 7 seconds. You're taking that if you're a running back or even a wide receiver at 100 pounds less than that. So he's a crazy athlete, pretty good pass rushing moves. And you watch most of his film, obviously not playing great competition. You're like, this guy's a top 15 pick. But then you realize, he's playing Southern Miss and some lower level offensive lines.
Right.
The only reason why I'm a little concerned with him, I love the predictive powers of athleticism, and he certainly has that and good pass rushing moves. When they played BYU, he was invisible. And that offensive line with Brady Christensen, who's going to be drafted, a few other really good blockers, and just Zach Wilson, I don't think he had a pressure all game. So he was very productive when they didn't play a really good offensive line. So I think Milton Williams will almost be drafted on his athleticism alone and the fact that he's pretty good using his hands. 6'3", 284, kind of an interesting body type. But it's someone that I think will need some polish in dealing with the power that he's going to face once he gets to the NFL.
All right, and the top two guys, potential first rounders, I think here, Christian Barmore out of Alabama and Levi Anwazurkay, who I almost pronounced correctly.
Christian Barmore is the guy who will probably go somewhere in the first round. And I think it will be a little bit partially because of a recency bias that in the college football playoff against Notre Dame and then Ohio State, he was awesome. He completely wrecked both of those offensive lines. But if you watch earlier in Alabama's full season, there was a lot of games where Christian Barmore was not invisible, but did not look like a first round pick. He's pretty tall. He's 6'4", 310. There's not a lot of really good pass rushing defensive tackles that are that size. He uses his hands well. We know Nick Saban coaches them up pretty well. What's interesting about Barmore is that most Alabama defensive tackles are like amazing run defenders because of that system, and they kind of lack in the pass rush department. He's the opposite. He's a good pass rusher, but I think he's actually somewhat of a liability because he plays so high and there's not a ton of power to his game when he needs to defend the run. But because of the Alabama pedigree, Nick Saban, all the Alabama defensive linemen that have gone in the first round, and most of which have played pretty well, I think Christian Barmore is the guy who will probably be picked at defensive tackle in round 1.
I actually like the idea, and I'm looking at it on William Hill right now. So Kwity Paye is -180 to be the first DL drafted, then Jalen Phillips at 2-1, and then Barmore and Gregory Rousseau at 8-1. I don't mind splashing on Barmore at 8-1 to be the first.
I would do it.
The first, I mean, you're done 8-1. So I mean, like, we're not expecting this to hit. But if he's the first guy taken, I just think these edge rushers and these defensive linemen are so all over the place. Anybody could go first overall. I'd rather gamble. Jason Owe, is it Owe or Owa?
Owe.
I got it right the first time. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
He's 12-1, so I don't hate either. So I think instead of paying the price for Kwity Paye at -180, I'm splashing on one of the guys at a little bit longer odds.
One thing on that, I think that's the smart bet because I believe that teams feel like it's Christian Barmore and then there's a pretty big drop off. So if a team's like, hey, like we kind of need some more interior rush, and most teams do, let's pick Barmore here at like 18 if we're the Raiders, or 17 if we're the Raiders. And especially, they just released Maurice Hurst. They have a need on their defensive line. I could see that, or even earlier saying like, hey, let's just get the consensus. I mean, not my consensus rankings, but like the consensus defensive tackle, like the top defensive tackle here, because there's a big drop off after that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and so finally, old Levi out of Washington, the number 1 overall defensive tackle for you.
Levi Anwazurkay, I think, is the most ready to be a 3-down defensive tackle. That at Washington, he's a little bit undersized. They had him like playing nose tackle, like he weighed 350 pounds, but he's not. He's like 6'3", 280, 285. Very good anchoring against double teams. I don't know how he was doing that at like well under 300 pounds. Lead pipes for arms, like very heavy hands, knows how to use pass rushing moves. And he's another one that he's built a little bit lower to the ground. A lot of quickness to power conversion just right at the point of attack. So I think he's not a crazy specimen. I have him graded at the back part of the first round, but just someone that has a very high floor that's just going to be good on first, second, and third down for you.
Okay, and is this how does he compare to Barmore in terms of ability to rush the passer from the interior?
He's not quite there, but I think he's close. And Barmore later in the season, especially in the college football playoff, was given more rush up the field. He was outstanding. Anwazurkay was like asked to like 2-gap from the zero technique spot. And there times where Washington let him face a guard one-on-one, you saw like him win in a variety of ways, with power, with a swim move, with just first step quickness. So he's one that it will kind of depend on how the team that ultimately picks him views him in terms of their scheme. I would just let him rush the passer, and on occasion, if you need to kick him lower, closer to the football, you could do that. He's just a very strong player, and I think he understands that he can beat blockers in a variety of ways.